Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I just had a spectacular conversation with Brian Wang.
The amount of money being made from AI.
We talk about Tesla, SpaceX, mergers, AI, supply chain, terafabs,
$50 billion per gigawatt.
Dyson spheres. We got it all. There's a fifth frontier model no one talks about. The fifth frontier model is Tesla's real world AI that has no competition at all. Here's our full conversation. Brian, you and I have been bouncing off each other a little bit on X about Tesla and SpaceX and AI, and I've been really struggling to grasp what's going on with AI. I think you have a lot of interesting takes on a lot of things, and I think you have a take on something to do with building large data centers that you can
Right.
explain that maybe will help me understand this and help the audience understand this.
One of the things that many people don't know, the amount of money being made from AI, particularly from Anthropic and from the rentals that XAI is being able to make, have all hit really high numbers. And the really high numbers are Anthropic was going from like last year, $1 billion to $10 billion ARR. So like 10x move. And that $10 billion, that's a big number, like bigger than probably Palantir, a big famous company, bigger than many software companies. So, but then they went even more vertical. They went from like $5 billion run rate to $50 billion run rate in like 5 months, right? Basically, it was with Opus 4.5.
This is with people paying them for using particularly Claude Code, maybe some enterprise solutions that relate to Claude Code.
That's right. They had thousands of companies using their system. When they went to Opus 4.5, they were able to double the amount they were charging. And yet, despite that, more companies signed up. And the companies that did sign up, or already signed up, used more tokens. So basically, double the price, double the companies, triple the tokens. A 12x move in spending is what got them to where they are with huge amounts of money. That's that huge move where suddenly they went from like 5 to $50 billion and still more demand. That as they get out Fable and Fable's coming back tomorrow, they're going to get even more money, probably double to triple. And if they had more data center, semi-analysis, Dylan Patel said that they could probably demand is probably 5 times what supply is, which is why they can pay so much to SpaceX XAI. Give me your 200 megawatts of compute, and I will pay you the equivalent of, the $11 billion was the equivalent of $50 billion per gigawatt. That's the pricing that we have for Blackwell chips, and it's going to go up again. So there's really, really large numbers. And the size of those numbers is Broadcom made $68 billion last year, about $88 billion this year, with $60 billion of profit, and they worth $2 trillion. If you're at that Q4 run rate of about $60 billion, adding up, SpaceX launch and other things, and this AI, then you fully justify the fact that you have high growth, high margin AI business, and you're not even renting out all of Colossus too.
I think you're touching on something that is a struggle for me. I would think you would call me AI pilled, that I see the
Okay.
demand growing. But it's not the demand for chips. The demand for chips
Mhm.
isn't the ultimate driver. The ultimate driver is that there are people who want to pay for the intelligence that comes from the model.
That's right.
And then you have these layers. And if you
Mhm.
have four equal models that are marketed well or whatever, then wherever you have good competition, the margins are going to fall
Mhm.
in that layer. But if the demand is growing so fast that nobody can catch up to it, the underlying question is how much demand is there for the
Mhm.
intelligence that's delivered by a combination of frontier models and other models that will also run on servers, will also run on data
Right.
centers. I think that demand is going to go up ridiculously over the
Right.
next 3 years, 2 years, 3 years,
Right.
5 years, 10 years. It's the Elon supersonic tsunami, and I don't
Right.
think it's the supply side of we've got better models, we've got better compute that is the
Mhm.
supersonic tsunami. I think it's the consumer slash B2B side where the consumers or the businesses that are using this realize, wow, we can be a lot more productive with this
Hmm.
if we spend money on this. And I think that's going to be I actually think consumers are going to ultimately be a bigger draw because ultimately the businesses are serving the consumers, right?
Right. Right.
So I think that's sort of the really big question. And what we see with
Hmm.
Anthropic is a surge in demand for that specific. That's a B2B demand for
Hmm.
businesses that are able to improve their business and ultimately deliver better products and services to customers.
Hmm.
Is that a fair description of the? In other words, if they're not making products and services better for customers, in the
Yeah.
long run, the demand goes away if there's no other demand.
Right.
Am I
Right.
capturing the top of the stack right?
You're capturing the top percent rank, except for the fact that the regular consumer is not where the money is. It's the enterprises. So Gartner, traditional IT industry analyst, they have ballpark numbers which have for a long time been about, at the big level, napkin math, $5 trillion for the IT industry. So the world economy is like $120 trillion, and then $5 trillion the IT economy, one third hardware, one third developers, programmers, and then one third software. Right? The developer software is also consulting. So that's like 1.5 trillion each piece of that puzzle, right? So clearly the hardware stuff has gone AI, and that's the huge amount of money there that led it. But then to your point about the usefulness of it, it's because enterprise software and the software inside companies is being swallowed up by AI. That the developers using Opus, Fable are multiple more productive. So then they can say, okay, I want to make a actual functioning software system inside Fortune 500 company, and a developer can go and work with the model and then get something done in like a week that might have taken a year before. That level of productivity is happening and it's getting better and better. The quality of it is getting.
I hear that from friends who work in companies that do this kind of work. Is we just spent a few days with a friend of mine and his family, and he
Mhm.
said he's 100 times more productive than he was before. That he doesn't have anybody
Right.
working around him anymore. He's producing 100 times as much value as he was before. But it's
Mhm.
the guy who does that feels that way. But is
Mhm.
it translating in these companies to them reducing their cost of goods sold or delivering more products and services? Because ultimately, a business only exists if these businesses only exist if money's coming in from. Maybe I'm misunderstanding how economies work, but
Yeah.
ultimately, it only works if you're delivering more products and services to consumers at a lower cost.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
if all this investment in AI isn't delivering that, I do
Yeah.
think there's a consumer side that will grow fast. But if
Yeah.
all of this isn't delivering that, then
Mhm.
does it end up there's this question, is it a bubble? If it's not
Right.
actually
Right.
delivering value and making companies more profitable, then
Mhm.
or making them deliver customers better products and services at lower cost, then
Yeah.
is the demand sustainable?
So they are delivering more products, more services, more profitability. Some key examples of really big numbers would be Meta. So Meta, even though they don't have the top model that they're shipping out, within their own company, they have made their AI advertising more targeted. They can generate the content for their advertising that goes on Facebook or Instagram, whatever. They've made that better. And they've made on the order of $50 billion of extra profitability, whatever, in their company. Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, they're seeing the results where it's tens of billions of dollars. Bigger money than the $24 billion per year from OpenAI, where they're mostly chat. So they have some on the enterprise side, but they didn't get that money yet. And that's the $50 billion on the enterprise side that is Claude Code and growing like $10 billion a month. Just chat, just helping consumers get a better PowerPoint, a better Excel is not as big money as like what you're trying to do, make a software program that actually can deliver some kind of productivity to people,
Well, when
right?
we have a chat conversation with Grok or Claude or ChatGPT or whatever, we're not using that many tokens. It's when you're doing
Right.
coding or it's when you're generating video that you're using a lot of tokens. And really, I think to
Right.
some extent, image generation uses a lot of tokens. And most
Right.
people aren't doing that. I think that's something that's going to change. That consumers are going to start. I think consumers will start coding. Well, we'll
Right.
start vibe. I think that's coming, and I have a theory about that. But
Yeah.
like, I just want to address the revenue side for Anthropic. So I just built a website, lcratio.com, long call ratio. It's lcratio.com for
Right.
understanding a certain aspect of investing in long calls. And I built
Hmm.
it in 4 hours using Grok Build. Most of that 4 hours, my time was spent watching podcasts while Grok Build did the work.
Yeah.
And I did, other things, shit posting on X, whatever.
Yeah.
And I used Codex as the senior software engineer to review the work of Grok Build, the junior software engineer, and it caught like 6 things that Grok Build did wrong, or not.
Yeah.
It had 6 suggestions to improve what
Improvements.
Grok
Yeah.
Build had done, and I
Yeah.
gave those 6 suggestions to Grok Build, and Grok Build fixed it.
Right.
And so I didn't use Claude Code,
Hmm.
and I used my $20 a month Codex account, and then
Hmm.
whatever I believe it's part of my Super Grok account that covered
Hmm.
Grok Build rather than I do have $100 in API credits on Grok
Yeah.
that I'll probably never use. So I was able to do something significant, not, and I'm going to do more, add more features to it, but
Yeah.
without using a lot of tokens,
Yeah.
and with very low cost. And then
Hmm.
I'm building some language learning apps with roughly the same approach of Codex and Grok
Yeah.
Build and staying within fairly low cost, but building fairly useful apps. So what I'm puzzled about is I look at it on the Anthropic side, right? If you're running Claude Code and you're charging probably 10x per token what I can get from Codex, not from Codex. I think Codex is also expensive, but what I can get from Grok Build, what I can get from Cursor, what I can get from probably one or two other models.
Yeah.
If I can use let's say the Claude Code is better, and I think there's a consensus that Claude Code is better. I think even Elon would agree with that.
Yeah.
But let's say I can use Grok Build for 95% of the work and use Claude Code or Codex as the senior software engineer, and
Hmm.
then I save a massive amount of money. Doesn't that ultimately destroy Anthropic's revenue stream?
Because of the different levels, the different markets of it. So the developers who are using, the high-end developers, the guys who, like really
The
good
guys
program,
who are
they can
doing the
program.
guys who are doing like much more complicated stuff than what I'm doing.
Right, right. The guys who do much more common stuff than they're doing. So they can burn through the $100 super premium monthly thing in like a day or like less than a day, right? So they're doing really challenging stuff. And then if you say, don't use um, Opus or don't use Fable or whatever like that, and use Codex or use whatever, their productivity will drop. They'll have more problems and it won't work as well. That when you're in that challenging space, the space where someone's willing to spend $5,000 a day, the equivalent of a few developers or something like that, to do something, they that's where they're getting the value from, right? If I can make a multi-million dollar product, $10 million product, $100 million product out of it, then I'm willing to spend, what would have been a team of 20, 30 developers, something like that, right?
Yeah,
So,
I hear that, but if I'm a CFO and I'm looking at this, I'm saying, why don't you try using one of these inexpensive models as a junior software engineer for a
right,
week, and then
right,
tell me that the productivity difference is that great? In other words,
right, right,
keep using Claude Code, but use it as a
right,
senior software engineer to
right.
review the work of whether it's Grok Build or I don't care Z,
Yeah,
whatever, some Chinese model. I don't care what it is. Productivity is
right.
is that much higher using Claude Code versus this other thing, and especially when you have this problem where. All right, let me answer that first, and then we'll go to the next problem.
The senior developer guys, the program leads, they will, because they're using this every day, and they also are looking at the other models and also the free models, the models from China, stuff like that. They'll try it out. And then they realize, if I was to split up this problem, just like if I'm running a team before I'm a manager, a product lead, where I have like 20 developers. I would know I can take this one and give it to the intern. I can give it to the junior guy, and same thing. I can give it to the free model. I can give it to the other one. They're routing stuff to different things where they're like doing different work. I can do the UI with this other cheap thing, right? So they're splitting up the problem and figuring out that efficiency, but they're not um, over analyzing it to the point where, like, if they're wasting that many tokens, then they'll say, hey, you burned through an extra 100 grand that you didn't need to, slap on the wrist, don't do that, and then shift over to the other model. And or this other model's cut up and you can shift over to that for free, right? So this kind of like triage thing will happen. And they're doing it now. So it's like, someone will get some big reward for saying, I went to a dumber model, it still works. It's the dumber model's faster because it can generate the tokens faster, and it's cheaper. So then they'll get another, hey, tick gold star, you saved us, $1,000, something like that. So there'll be some of that. But you're not going to save your way into a $100 billion company, right? You need to actually make something huge that will, be the sales force or something huge kind of thing. So the value for the AI side on the high end is, am I launching new $100 million, billion businesses off of new product, right? There, toward the low end, there's the save money, make this company more efficient, save 10%. And there you're, in the old line companies figuring out how to save and get that extra money out. But the big money on AI will be in the new stuff, right? I couldn't do that before. Now I can. And now I'm making huge amounts of money, right? So, and the fact that 99% will end up being free, that goes to a value that Tesla will have in that, assuming they merge together, making edge compute, where I make a megapod or I make an AI5 chip in an Optimus that's doing something that's 100 times better than a Mac Mini, right? I'm running free AI on a really powerful system doing the broadly useful day-to-day stuff that will enrich our lives and make us better, but that will still leave the tip of the spear where I'm breaking new ground, doing hard things that will be the big money.
I don't understand. It's above my head, my pay grade, right? This is
Yeah.
above the level that I understand. But when I look at things, it looks like Claude Code is not that much. It's like slightly better than Cursor, but Cursor is 1/10 the
Right.
cost per token. It's not like it's
Right.
99 and 70. It's like 99 and
Yeah.
97. The
Right.
gap is not that wide. I'm not even sure if it's not 99 and 98. I think to some extent it's that developers get used to they learn Claude Code, they
Hmm.
figure out how to use Claude Code, and then it's like, well, if I had to use Cursor, it would take me a week to figure out how
Hmm.
to get as much out of Cursor as I'm getting out of Claude Code. It's like, well, yeah, but if you spent that week and then the next 50 weeks you were
Hmm.
saving 90% on your coding,
Yeah.
then that would make the company a lot of money. And the other thing, sorry, there's two other things that hit me. You mentioned like doing all this coding generates $100 billion business. Like, no,
Hmm.
we're not. I don't think we're seeing that. There's not
Hmm.
that many $100 billion businesses out there, and I
Hmm.
think
Yeah.
you have a lot of large. I think there's this problem. I think a lot of large companies are doing this because they have to, but then
Yeah.
they think they have to, but they're not applying it well, and
Hmm.
we saw this with, I think it was Uber. Like if your underlying business is going to fail, it doesn't matter
Hmm.
how much you spend on Cloud Code. Your underlying business is
Hmm.
going to fail. If you don't have a
Right.
plan for how this spend on code is going to make your business profitable and make your
Yeah.
business grow and make your business successful, you're just spending money on tokens. And I think
Right.
a lot of the businesses that are using AI in general may not be using it efficiently. And what's
Hmm.
ultimately going to happen is the macro hards are going to come along, and somebody's
Hmm.
going to come up with an entirely new business model that relies on agents to just
Hmm.
totally wipe out existing businesses.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that requires Claude Code. I think it requires, how do we apply this new tool, broad broad
Hmm.
concept of the tool of like AI coding and AI agents and harnesses and loops and all this stuff. How do we apply this to identify a business that we can outcompete, and then outcompete them. I think that's where it's
Um,
going. So if but the company that figures out how to do this with inexpensive coding
mhm.
wins over the company that does it with expensive coding. In other words, if I'm using Cursor at 1/10 your cost, and you're using Claude Code, and your Claude Code is 1% better than my Cursor, but my cost is 1/10 of your cost,
Mhm.
and I'm more innovative in how I apply with these tools, I'm going
Yeah.
to take your market.
If the economy didn't change, if we weren't doing entirely new things, right, where it's just the current 120 trillion dollar economy, then yes, you get efficient, you get free, we do what we currently do, and then um, we would all use free because there would be a limit to what we have. The and the AI top level, in order to keep monetizing, has to keep moving forward. So if we say that we got DeepSeek and then in between, before Mythos and Fable, we had Opus 4.5, which is the 2025 level. That was where the big monetization thing went vertical, where we had some good stuff in synthetic and reasoning, those earlier models. But then it went next level in between 24 and 25 with that level. And then if you talk to anyone who's taking a look at Fable or Mythos, they say, oh my God, it's purely next level. It's so good. It's AGI, all that kind of
Yeah, my
stuff.
friend was
Right.
using Fable
Right. Right.
until it got cut
So
off.
right. But they're coming back tomorrow. So the so yes, in order for Claude or any of the leading models to keep going, then they have to have another level and keep going. So if you're not tossing in Mythos and then whatever after that, adaptive, whatever else, if you cannot keep moving that frontier forward and having a distinct advantage of it, then yes, the everything is only 6 to 9 months behind for where it's free. Then if in that 6 to 9 months you haven't done something amazing, then the the profitability can start eroding and going away.
Can you bring
Right.
us back out of the? I have this whole theory that it doesn't matter how smart your AI is if you don't have enough
Mhm.
compute. So if
Right.
I've had these issues. So Claude is there's a free version of Claude. I pay for Gemini, I pay for Google for I pay for Gemini, I pay for ChatGPT, and I pay for Grok. So far, I
Yeah.
haven't paid for Claude yet.
Mhm.
They announced, oh, we've got Opus 4.8. You can try it now for
Yeah.
free. And I
Mhm.
go to Claude and I try to use Opus 4.8, and it says, oh, that model's not available. It's like literally on screen saying try Opus 4.8. And I submit a
Yeah.
prompt and it says, oh, that model's not available right now. And then I
Right.
go to the lower model and they were compute constrained and they weren't even able to answer my prompt. I'm not saying this happens all the time. I use Claude all month. I have a
Yeah.
particular I track my workouts every month and then I go over every day with an AI to just sort of like get a feel for the different AIs. And this month was Claude. It was fine.
Yeah.
And I occasionally use Claude for other things, and it's fine. It's not better
Mhm.
in that use case. It's not better or worse than the other AIs. I
Right.
think Gemini is a little worse than the other three, but
Mhm.
um, but I've had this issue with Claude. I've had
Mhm.
this issue with ChatGPT where I'm paying for ChatGPT. I have not exhausted my account, and I go and ask it to do something, and it just freezes. This has happened,
Yeah.
I would say, like 3 or 4 times in the past month, if not more, that this happened
Mhm.
with ChatGPT or Codex.
Yeah.
And Codex and ChatGPT are the same for the people who don't. They're same. They're both OpenAI for people who don't know.
Yeah.
Codex is a coding tool using a ChatGPT model. I think it has happened to me with Grok once, but it almost never happens. And then with
Mhm.
Gemini, Gemini is the only other model that really generates video well, besides Grok,
Mhm.
besides
Yeah.
Grok Imagine. And Gemini cuts me off at like 2 or 3 videos a day
Right.
because there's everyone's compute constrained. Grok is probably the least compute constrained, partly because they don't have as much demand for people using their model.
Right.
But if I need compute today at this moment, and I go to your model and I don't get an answer because you're compute constrained, and then there's
Right.
this other model that costs 1/10 the price and
Mhm.
has compute available, like I
Mhm.
can't see myself paying for Claude when I hear all these people telling me
Mhm.
that they're paying for it and they're getting compute constrained, and I've experienced it. Like it's a
Right.
really bad consumer experience when you're trying to get new customers and their first
Right.
experience is that model's not available right now. Right
Right.
now,
Right.
I've used it enough that I understand that's a 5% of the time problem with Claude,
Right.
right? And it's a 2% of the problem time with OpenAI, and it's a nearly
Mm.
0% of the time problem with Gemini and Grok. But if I
Right.
need compute now and you're not able to deliver it, and the other model is pretty damn good and
Right.
available,
Right.
I think long run, the winner is not who has the best model. The winner is who has the most compute at the lowest cost. And that's Google
Mhm.
and Grok. That's Google and
Right.
SpaceX. Am I
Right.
wrong about that thinking?
You're right about that thinking for chat. If you're chatting with it, if you're having it make a report, if you're having it do research for you, doing the AI equivalent of Google search and that kind of thing, then very soon free models will do everything you need. Everything you need in terms of like looking at anything that you want to wiki up, anything you want to write up in terms of written content, a 50-page article, a 100-page report, that will go to the free area. And you want to have some means of delivering it for free. I don't want to pay tokens for that. I want to have an AI5 chip. I'll talk to Optimus. It'll give me great answers. And then after that, it'll go to a phone. It'll be cheaper and cheaper because that level of interaction does not challenge the AI, any AI, right? So just like I can go to my phone or computer and I can run a chess program that is better than any grandmaster. Before, 30 years ago, you needed supercomputer, Deep Blue, $1 billion to beat Kasparov. Now I can beat Magnus Carlsen with an app and stuff like that. So that level of interaction will not challenge anything. So you're correct, that will go to there. But I'm saying that there's another area where you're pushing the frontier of a software factory where it's like, make me a version of CUDA, which is the parallel programming language that is the basis for NVIDIA's valuation, making their GPUs more valuable. That will be, for a time, a challenging thing where your best AI will enable you to do that. And then that would enable AMD or others or Google and SpaceX AI to take their chips and then make them easy to program and do all that kind of stuff. But then the core valuation, the tightest loop will be the self-improvement loop, which is make my AI data center more efficient, write everything in C so I can be 10 times faster on training, and then make that more efficient. And then anything in the AI stack of ultimate intelligence, and also a hugely challenging problem that needs a lot of data, like robotaxi, which is something that is beyond whatever, and you needed to spend a bunch of time gathering the data to do something. So there's grand challenge type things that will be where the value will go, and be like, I'm going to do loops like Andre Karpathy to do scientific research or do algorithm research, where I'm all the researchers in the world, all the PhDs in the world couldn't help me do this thing, and now super intelligence. And the thing is, us mortals would not be able to come up with the question of what is the challenging problem for it, right? I wouldn't know what it would be because I'm not on the leading edge. The person on the leading edge would say, if I only knew this, I can ask it. It's like you
Yeah,
need to
but
be able to
yeah, but
ask the genie the super valuable question.
what percentage of the demand for AI is people on the leading edge? I mean,
Right.
my sense is that you're half talking about training compute and half talking about inference compute. My sense is that 95% of compute is inference, and
Yeah.
like even if I'm using it for coding, if
Mhm.
if your model, if I'm doing a lot of coding and I'm doing a lot of tokens, and then your model's not available,
Right.
if what I'm doing is important and this other guy has a model that's almost as good as yours, then but it's available. Why am I not using the model that's available instead of the one that's not available? Why isn't this is my like under ultimately I see there's four frontier models, right? There's
Right.
Anthropic with Claude, There's OpenAI with ChatGPT, there's SpaceX XAI with Grok, and there's Google with Gemini.
Mhm.
And only the latter two have their own compute at scale.
Yeah, right.
Anthropic and OpenAI have to pay others for the vast majority of their compute. And Google's even paying SpaceX for compute. That's how much demand for compute is. If they're all reasonably close to each other, in the
Mhm.
long run, isn't the company with the most compute at the lowest cost the winner? Or is it like, no, my and really, if you have the most compute at the lowest cost, don't you ultimately develop your training compute faster too, and you end up with a better model in the long run? Because Claude has the lead now. Is
Right.
Claude going to have the lead forever?
If they get to recursive self-improvement and they have enough on the energy compute side. So I would give the analogy of the Industrial Revolution. So before the Industrial Revolution, you do not have steam engines, you do not have combustion engines, you don't have jet engines, all that kind of stuff. Everyone's got horses and humans, right? So, and then what happens by World War II is whoever has the most oil and the most oil-driven machines, mass producing 40,000 tanks, and then having enough oil to run your tanks many miles. That was what World War II is about, where Germany didn't have as much oil. They had to synthesize their oil from coal. And then they tried to attack Russia to get the Caucasus oil, right? And that was only 20% or 10% of what the United States had, because the United States was a superpower of oil back then. So that goes to, if oil was like the intelligence and the data of today, right? Then the economy that has more oil, like you're saying, has more intelligence, has more energy, wins, right? Because the U.S. economy was, X trillion dollars. The other economy, Japan's, 8 times smaller, and they make less stuff. Once you get fully mobilized, then the one with more energy and stuff wins,
Yeah.
right? Which is exactly your point. So then if intelligence becomes the same way, where it's like I need to have all this energy to drive my intelligences, and then the intelligence in various domains caps out because I can't get better at tic-tac-toe than there's no super intelligence tic-tac-toe because the game, the domain limits what you can do.
Yeah.
And then I think we'll find many domains have limits, but the domains that may not have limits will be certain areas of science, certain level of intelligence, certain areas of physics, which will be
Engineering
un
too.
engineering too, that are unlimited domains.
Yeah.
So the value will go to the unlimited domains. Medicine will be unlimited up to the point we make everyone immortal and solve all diseases. Then that will kind of cap out as well. So you'll end up capping out, and then those things will become free, and then there'll be this free and abundant world where we have a lot of energy, we're all immortal, everyone's healthy, and then there'll be the area of the economy where it actually is pushing forward will be the one which is the unlimited domain of ultimate mathematics, ultimate physics, ultimate whatever, and then expanding. But that will become a, other than the fact that we keep expanding the amount of energy we have, creating our Dyson sphere, and then expanding the solar system and that kind of stuff, the um, it will become somewhat like a Star Trek world in that the we don't need to create artificial restrictions. It's like, oh, you want to do that? Yeah, go ahead and do that. Energy is mostly free anyway, kind of thing. Intelligence is mostly free. We can do that. So it's only when you're rationing on pushing whatever domain to solve some really obscure problem. So you're right in that it will siphon off. But in the meantime, getting there, there will be this battle between um, SpaceX, XAI, Anthropic, and that kind of thing towards, where the ultimate value becomes. Because until you transition to a abundance world, you know, then if we're still dealing with certain of these economic things around resource allocation and that kind of stuff, then it'll be restricted. So there'll be a transition. So yes, there will be, you can do a lot for free. It will end up becoming more and more where that will make it easy to have abundance for everyone. There will be utterly idiotic to not do that. Yeah.
I think what you're suggesting is there's a certain level at which, like, I don't think we're there yet, but there's a certain level at which AI starts generating this abundance that generates value for consumers, and that's where the demand for AI ultimately comes from. Am I
Right.
hitting? Okay.
Well, you'll get to a level of full industrialization. Like we have a third world economy, and then we're getting into a developed intelligence economy. A developed intelligence economy probably is everyone has their own Optimus bot or 10 Optimus bots, and we're controlling stuff, and then we're doing things. And then at that level, no more of this, Maslow's hierarchy of like, I need to have whatever, right? You get to that level, and then it's a question of, do I want to participate in pushing the frontier? Right? That's where there's some rationing resources where we need to do something. And but then everyone else can be, in terms of achieving goals or wanting to do something, like we can go exploring the solar system, but we have the rockets to do that. Do you want to go to the moon? Do you want to go to Mars? Do you want to go to Phobos? And then we're rewarding people for, like here's my Instagram of me on the asteroid series and stuff like that. And number one here, that kind of stuff, where you're doing things around exploration, which I think somewhat like Star Trek, that kind of thing, but except some aspect of a consumer angle on it.
I'm just picturing James Kirk and Spock doing selfies and posting them on
That's right.
Instagram. Hey, we've got a new
That's right.
planet. So, all right, I think I took you way off track.
Yeah.
Let's try to get back on track. Where do you see this going in the near term with Anthropic, with frontier models, with data centers, and with the supply chain for all of that?
Driving home the value of getting a bit more energy because of that $50 billion per gigawatt, right? We have the altimeter thing, and we have the actual Google paying, $11 billion per year for 200 megawatts, right? So that is the $50 billion per gigawatt, which is also $50 million per megawatt, right? So we have these mobile units that are pulled from the back of a truck, right? And we have like 47 of them, 46 of them as of May, outside Colossus 2, right? So
Yeah.
46 of them, we added, like 19, right? Which was like adding like 400 megawatts of power. Each one of the 16 megawatt units is basically adding $800 million per year of value. If you get chips associated with this power, right, and get it fully installed and then rent it out, then each one of these energy units gives you $800 million per year. And then they have larger ones that are 35 megawatts, 38 megawatts, and each one of those is almost $2 billion per year, right? So if you have 50 of them, you're at about $100 billion per year, which is the revenue of Tesla, right? Tesla's at about $100 billion per year. So then Elon just last week bought APR Energy, which has 1.1 gigawatts of power. They are using airplane turbines, again at 35 megawatts of power, which is $1.75 billion per year at the $50 billion per year level. I think Rubin's rent out at double that price, or if you go to the Fable Mythos type model, you'll also increase the value. Also
I think
for
Rubin is more than double, but
Starship,
I think Rubin.
Elon talked about launching 10,000. I agree. I was just being, conservative on that. Yeah. So Starship, the AI1 thing, they said it would be 70 kilowatts per ton. So weigh a little over 2 tons for 150 kilowatts. But that means with 100 tons of payload for version 3 Starship, which we're launching, we already launched once and we'll launch again in July and again in August. By August, maybe we go to orbit and then start delivering version 3 satellites. Not the AI one until next year, but other ones. Once
Starlink
we
is free.
deliver the AI ones, one full load of 100 tons is 7 megawatts. That's $350 million per year, right? From just one Starship with AI chips in it. We'll double the payload next year with a version 4 to 200 tons. Same AI1, that's 14 megawatts, that's $700 million per year. At the Blackwell price, if we go to Rubin, this could be $1.4 billion per year per launch. And I think we can do 100 launches. I think that's Elon's goal, is to get 100 launches to get about a gigawatt up there. And then that's $50 billion per year. So it's any bit of more energy is a lot of money is the main point on this. And how Tesla and SpaceX can work together is that here, this is semi-analysis. They do super detailed analysis. The orange thing is how much they think they can get from the available grid capacity,
Yeah.
right? So they're saying, okay, this year we add 21 gigawatts of power. This is adding the power in the shell of an AI data center, not necessarily getting the chips with it. That could take a year, it could take 2 years after that in order to get the chips. But for SpaceX XAI, we've shown we can do that in a year. We can get the power up, and then we can get the chips with it. But the main point is that these orange things, so 17 gigawatts in grid capacity, another 15 gigawatts, 14 gigawatts next year, and then they're done. They're expecting no more grid power after that. Then it's like all this blue behind the meter, which is the natural gas stuff that SpaceX is doing with those turbines I just described, right? The Doosan from Korea for 380. We have 12 on order. That's a total of 6 or 7 gigawatts of power that SpaceX XAI have on order, which is a significant fraction of this blue behind the meter line. And by Elon owning the APR thing, they can probably get to 5 gigawatts produced per year. But the point is that for Tesla with SpaceX, Tesla and SpaceX can add 60 gigawatts or more orange that doesn't exist here, that they're not expecting to exist. How can that happen? So, going forward. So we just did a deal with Sunrun, where Tesla and Sunrun will do virtual power plant. So 16 gigawatts of solar power on roofs that Sunrun installed to go along with 10 gigawatts that Tesla already has access to with power walls and stuff. That is a bunch of soft solar power that is not being fully used by the grid. So by using virtual power plant, we had virtual power plant here. So back in Las Vegas, there was 9 months ago, where they introduced the Mega Block, a video where Tesla introduced the Mega Block, which was 4 megapacks together with a transformer, right?
Yeah.
And they were saying you can
for next generation.
When we add more AI,
it's
more next generation megapacks.
For next generation megapacks.
So right. So the power is fluctuating all the time, right? But then the light or darker gray, darker blue line, if you add a gigawatt of power for a big AI data center, you shift to the bright blue line. And then what happens is you go over grid capacity. I only have so much nuclear power plant, hydro, and other stuff. And then I go over, and that's where you add the battery power. But with a lot of virtual power plant, I could add 3 megawatts here. A bunch of these peaks would go over the grid capacity, but I would still be able to handle it because I would have so much grid capacity from all this solar, all these power walls, that I could handle that amount of extra power. But the point would be that I could free up 3 gigawatts. So of the 500 gigawatts of constant power, 1,000 gigawatts of total power plant, we could get 60 to 100 gigawatts of power, which basically is no one else can do that because everyone else is not able to shape the grid the way Tesla can. So Tesla can shape the grid by getting all the solar, deploying more megapacks, and being able to unlock all this soft power, all the adding power that would have pushed us to blackouts constantly from 6 to 9 p.m. They can say, I can handle all of that because I'm making so many megapacks.
I hear that.
And I'm making so much solar on roofs.
I don't feel like
looping it all together in virtual power plants. Go ahead.
I don't feel like megapacks and power walls are being produced in enough volume to make that dent. Am I misunderstanding how much they're making?
So the thing is, I don't have to make it all across the United States. I just need to make it, if I'm putting them into Tennessee, I only need to put um, a gigawatt, 2 gigawatts into Tennessee, and then I free up my power,
Well, I mean, it
right?
works. It
So
works.
I can
I
do
see
it
it
region
working
by
for.
region.
I see it working for SpaceX and Tesla data centers. I don't see it working for the country as a
Right.
whole.
Right. I'm not saying it works for the country as a whole either. I'm saying it works for the data centers for Tesla and SpaceX,
Okay.
right? And that's the value where everyone else isn't unlocking it, and suddenly they work together and they free up by freeing up 5 gigawatts next year to go with the 2 gigawatts they're adding for the turbines. That's 7 gigawatts. 7 gigawatts times $50 billion is $350 billion. That's almost double the revenue this year of NVIDIA, right? So adding that extra power together. So the issue is if Tesla and SpaceX don't merge, Tesla can still add that power, but they would only be paid the rental number versus if they have a frontier model, they can make even more money, right? So the monetization is better with SpaceX. Also, some coordination on that, tighter coordination would be also speed up the deployment because it's also speed of adding these things. That is, I think, the value where, and you're right, not doing the whole boiling the ocean of the entire country to add in 100 gigawatts because I don't have enough chips to take advantage of that. I only want to add 2 gigawatts here, 5 gigawatts there. So if I can control where I'm adding it, I'll make the grid better for everyone because I want to make sure that customers aren't, getting blackouts or doing whatever. But if I can shape particular regions, Tennessee, Texas, wherever, where I can pop in my data center, that's where I want to do it. I want to enable the capacity to be there with batteries and solar, working with other battery and solar companies so that where we're all making money with virtual power plant, and then being able to go to the utility and say, I have everything that you guys are doing second by second. I'm giving you this other power behind your power plant with solar and batteries. I can add more solar and batteries so that you can give me the power. I can be a very good customer to you because I will have a very forgiving service level agreement. You don't have to give me any power from 6 to 9. I'll run my mobile turbines. I'll run my batteries. I can, shut off from that time. So then give me the gigawatt at, at nighttime and from up until like 5 p.m. And then I'll go on my own business for the rest and then come back. So that's why SpaceX and XAI and Tesla can get power from the grid that other people can't. Gigawatts of any kind are hugely valuable in this situation.
We went from what I find to be a very interesting conversation about where AI is going to you dropped in like SpaceX and Tesla working together as if they need and you went you went where I wasn't expecting to go, which is that they have to merge in order to make this work.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what you're saying, but
Yeah.
and then somehow if they merge, that's
I
going to make
think they make more money together.
well, but they work together already anyway. And the let's confront the merger thing head on. There's this what I would consider a fantasy that if Tesla and SpaceX merge, everything will go perfectly. There will be massive synergies, and all these things will happen faster because they've merged. It ignores that the merger itself
Yeah.
would be a massive drag on everything they're doing right now because mergers don't just happen like I mean I suppose if Elon can build a data center in 19 days he can merge two companies in 19 days but some people would say there might be some drag in the process of merging two companies. It might not happen in 19 days, and the leaps and
Yeah.
bounds that Tesla and SpaceX would have to go through to pull the merger off is something that takes a lot of time and resources and slows everything down while you're trying to put your merger together. And the reality is that the two companies have been
Yeah.
cooperating effectively since roughly 2008 for 18 years or longer. I just see this fantasy that somehow being merged makes them work together better when they already work together well. What am I missing about number one, how the
Mhm.
merger happens magically with no cost and no drag and no problems, and number two, there's this magic synergy and extra
Mhm.
efficiency that comes from them being merged.
I think it's that if they are separate companies for certain transactions, like, okay, I make certain energy and I sell it to you and that kind of stuff, or I make some kind of not final product, right? That's say AI delivered final product, that kind of thing. Then the inefficiency is that you have to, get taxed twice and that kind of stuff. So I think there's those issues. And then also the, I think there's is inefficiency in terms of like you need to figure out how to separate and allocate things legally. Like I'm going to make a joint product, like I'm going to make Digital Optimus, and then there's the development cost, profit sharing, other things, and also the meetings that have to occur that are extra. Where if it's all totally one company, that wouldn't happen. So I think my argument would be, and it probably takes longer to do. I think there's more drag, inefficiencies by keeping things separate. You're saying there's drag putting it forward. So I guess we'll disagree on that.
Well, no,
So
but
I think
there's two
that
things. One thing is that there's when people push for the merger, they ignore the drag of the merger itself, and then they imagine that
right.
there's no conflict inside a corporation once it's one corporation, as if all corporations function
Mhm.
smoothly without rivalries and that I realize that the two corporate cultures are probably not that different between SpaceX and Tesla. But remember that Elon formed XAI because he
Yeah.
couldn't get AI engineers to work for Tesla. So he had to create XAI to
Right.
create a startup to attract these bright AI engineers. So now you're going to force the same AI engineers to merge
Mhm.
into Tesla that they didn't want to work for in the first place. They I,
Mhm.
and I think this also ignores that there's things that they do separately that might face more drag. I mean,
Mhm.
really simple example is you're the Chinese government and one of the largest defense
Mhm.
contractors in America that's job is to launch spy satellites to spy on your country now owns your largest car factory
Yeah.
that puts out cars with cameras driving around your country so it can spy on your country. Doesn't the Chinese government have a
Mhm.
problem with
Yeah.
SpaceX owning the largest car factory in China?
You raise good points about many possible inefficiencies and those kind of things. I think that the ultimate question would be, does it help? Does Elon think that putting things together, does he see a way where doing stuff together will give them a better shot at overtaking Anthropic and being the number one model and getting to recursive self-improvement with it, and tightening up that loop? If he sees that, then the proposal would be made. I expect it to be made in the next couple of months and then actually execute upon the next four. So, and then I also think that the voting is, sufficiently in the bag where Elon has 20% and then another 3% from insiders, and he'll get enough institutions. And then he'll have enough. He doesn't need any of the retail, but he will get at least 20, 50% retail. I think 50% retail. So it will pass and then it'll be it, and then it'll be done. So the any shareholder Tesla revolt over concerns about robotaxi, I think will be ignored, and won't be relevant. I think the number
So you
that end
think
up
that
being
Tesla
executed at will be
shareholders
good.
will? So you think that Elon will screw Tesla shareholders?
No, I don't think he'll screw Tesla shareholders. He will give Tesla shareholders 20, 30% premium over wherever it's at, and there'll be certain level of execution on robotaxi that will happen. But the James Stevenson people who say I won't vote for this unless it's 800 or $1,000. I think 800 might actually happen, but it's where it's gonna be $1,000 and push it past like 2-year delay. I think if Elon decides it's going to happen, he'll say, here, 30%, you can vote for staying at 450, 500, or you'll have 20% more. or even 25, 30% more, the standard premium of a buyout, that would be sufficiently enticing to anyone who like came in at 200, $300 and is saying, yeah, that seems good. So I think that he'll have enough support doing that. But
Okay,
then
so
even if there was less, he will convince institutions and have support enough to do it.
okay, I want to push back on something you said because there's I think this is one of the grave errors that
Sure,
what you and others are making, and you can tell me I'm wrong. Elon is talking about what's happening
sure,
at SpaceX, independent of Tesla, that we're going to have more compute than anybody else.
right,
That's going to enable us to train models better than anybody else.
yeah,
That's going to enable us to serve more inference compute than anybody else. And we're going to
hmm
win. And none of what he's talking about requires Tesla.
hmm
I think that number one, they just raised 85, 80
right,
billion dollars. I think that they will build and deploy and start operating a Vera Rubin data center this year. Before the end of the year, it will be up and running. I think that it will
yeah,
be roughly 10x the tokens
yep,
of the current, or let's say it'll be a 1 gigawatt data center. It'll be roughly 10x
Blackwell,
the tokens of an existing 1 gigawatt Blackwell data center, maybe more. You suggested that would be worth 2x the revenue
yep,
of a
right,
Blackwell data center. I think it might be 5x or 10x the revenue of a Blackwell data center. Um, and that the flywheel's already started for
right,
SpaceX. Once they started getting these contracts for renting out Colossus
right,
GPUs, the next data center they build, which I love the way they put it in
hmm
the IPO documents. It's not that they're better than anyone else at building out data centers and supplying data center services to others. It's that there's only one other company that's as good as them, and I think they meant Google. But I think that they have demonstrated they're really good at building terrestrial data centers. And if you spend $60 billion building a Vera Rubin data center and you're able to rent it out for $100 billion a year or 200, so I think SpaceX has a flywheel going. I think
right,
that they build their next data center. I think by the end of this year, we will see a Vera Rubin data center operating with 1 gigawatt, and certainly by the middle of next year, generating significantly more than $100 billion a year in revenue. I think there's a strong chance that I think even $200 billion a year more revenue is possible with a 1 gigawatt Vera Rubin data center. If
yep,
everything I'm seeing is that demand continues to increase
hmm
and there's just a massive shortage of data centers available that can provide the compute that frontier models need.
yeah,
I saw it was funny. OpenAI's CFO was on with the All In pod, and
hmm
Calacanis asked her about Elon's success with Colossus, and you could tell she wasn't happy
hmm
about Elon because Elon sued their company. But
yeah,
she acknowledged he's done that. I think there's so much demand for compute that they can deploy this massive data center with 10x the tokens per watt on 1 gigawatt, the same 1 gigawatt, and all of a sudden you have, I don't know why you don't have 10x the revenue. And then if demand continues to rise faster than supply, it may be
hmm
more. This is
right,
this is one of those things that let me so on this point, I don't see where SpaceX needs Tesla to run their flywheel and grow their flywheel, and I don't see where Tesla and faster than anyone else. And I don't see where Tesla needs SpaceX to run its robotaxi Optimus flywheel. Needs in the sense of being merged. Will they continue to coordinate with each other? Will they support each other? Will they use Grok? Like I have Grok in my car, right? Are they going to
hmm
use? Is Tesla going to use Grok to manage some digital Optimus task? Is
hmm
SpaceX going to use Cybertrucks to operate Starbase and Megapacks to operate their data centers? Sure, they don't
hmm
need to be merged to do all those things.
hmm
And both companies move faster, have huge leads in some areas, and move faster than anyone else already without merging. And I watch Elon as
hmm
closely, I think as closely as anyone.
yeah,
I think he's focused on executing on the engineering in his companies, and he's not focused on the financial engineering between the companies. I'm not saying he
right,
can't do it. I'm not saying he doesn't have the bandwidth for it, but he's got a lot on his plate, and it's working. Like
Yeah.
this is the thing that I think people don't get is that they feel like there's this need for the merger. Like what they're doing now is working. Okay. And then the one other thing I'll say is from an investor's perspective, like to be honest, like I'm kind of all in. Like I don't really like I don't agree with it. It's not that I'm opposed to the merger. I think it's unnecessary, but if you told me if Elon said we need it, yeah, I'm probably going to vote for it.
Yeah.
If I get like not enough for my shares of what I think it's worth, I'm still getting SpaceX shares, and I believe in SpaceX long term and Tesla long term, and it's the same company effectively. Okay, fine. I'm not worried about that. What
Hmm.
what I see is both companies. Sorry, from an investor perspective, I think there are investors out there who think SpaceX is a better opportunity than Tesla. I think there are investors who see Tesla as a better opportunity than SpaceX. I think there's an investor who says, you know, I want to be 60% in the S&P 500. I want 30% in Tesla, and I want 10% in SpaceX. And somebody else wants 30% in the and 1 and 30. And you're taking away from the investor the ability to choose what share I want in which group. And there's a reason that I go there, which is because when you look at the frontier model competition,
Hmm.
there's four models. If you don't count the Chinese and the open source, which I think the open source and the Chinese stuff is overrated. We can talk about that. I still think the frontier models all have an edge on all the open source models, and that's a separate conversation. There's a fifth frontier model no one talks about. The fifth frontier model is Tesla's real world AI that has no competition at all. I think SpaceX's value is primarily in data centers, both earthbound and eventually orbital and beyond
Hmm.
orbital.
Yeah.
I think that's their biggest source of value in 2027. By
Hmm.
far, the largest revenue for SpaceX will be data center revenue. Starlink will
Hmm.
grow, but
Yeah.
data center revenue will grow faster than Starlink revenue. It will grow much larger than Starlink. Starlink in the long run will be very high revenue, but data centers will be even more.
Yeah.
Tesla's robotaxi and Optimus revenue will grow radically, but the big distinction is at the high end. I don't think Grok revenue matters that much, and I think you ultimately end up if you go out a few years. You have this idea that there's you're not alone, that there's this recursive self improvement that whoever gets there first wins. And I don't think that's true. I think that there's a lot more to it than recursive self improvement, and all the frontier models are going to be within 3 to 6 months of each other indefinitely. But there's no competition for Tesla real world AI, and it may ultimately be that AGI, if it happens, if it matters, AGI, artificial superintelligence, it may be that real world intelligence is more important for that than chatbot intelligence, and Tesla's AI ultimately wins the race. I'm not convinced there is such a race for AGI and ASI, and I think there might end up being, four or five, 10 different ASIs and AGIs out there, and they balance each other, and that's great. But when you look at real world, when you look at the frontier model competition, they're all pretty close to each other. And when you look at real world AI, no one knows who's number two. I mean, do you know who's number? I don't know who's number two. Do you?
Real way I know. I don't know who's
Xiaomi,
number two.
maybe? I don't know.
Maybe Figure. I don't know.
Xpeng? No,
Yeah.
it's not Figure.
In the long run, things will end up the same, right? And so they can probably win without it. But I think there's probability around um, improving the odds right now because things are still close right now, and we're behind Anthropic right now. So the the merger, I think, will free up um, cash, tens of billions of dollars in cash. That there's some financial engineering there that frees it up, and that's important in the near term because you have $100 billion in SpaceX, $40 billion in cash in Tesla. A combined entity can have less cash in reserve versus having two cash reserves. It would then free up, 20, $30 billion and potentially also have um, a cash raise possibility that makes things easier. So that's a financial engineering argument on that. Also, the ability to get an extra 10 to 20 gigawatts per year and efficiently monetize it with hopefully a frontier model, like getting to Opus, level with Opus 4.8 level with
With
on the
4.5?
programming side with 4.5, and then the after that 5 or 5 point whatever, that would be a Fable level, hopefully in 2 3 months. That being able to monetize the 20 gigawatts better um, would be better for Tesla and I think better for SpaceX. So I think that is what I think would be the advantage of doing it, that there's significant gigawatts when you need it, significant money when you need it, and better monetization in this near-term period. So, and then the other thing is, I think there will be efficiencies, and if Elon agrees, and he would then choose the merger of that innovation loop being just that bit faster by having the two together. Um, you can say you make some points where that might not be the case. My theory it is the case, and the question would be, does Elon think that he can save, because he's the one doing it day to day. He can say, if I didn't have to do blah 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 separate company, I could save 10% of my time, and my teams could save 10% of the time. If he could see that efficiency, my theory is that is there, then you're executing, in 11 months what would take you 12 months. It's marginal, but that compounds, and then that would be beneficial. So that's my argument. So, but in terms of like settling it, either Elon proposes it. If he does propose it, it's going to pass, and then we'll see how it works out, right? But but then in terms of the AI part of it, I think we're going to. It's about how quickly can we get all of this spread out where we do have everyone having a billion tokens, a trillion tokens, where we're doing everything agent wise, where we're rolling out digital Optimus, physical Optimus, and going to that world of a lot of AI where all the work becomes relatively easy, just like all farming became relatively easy once you have combines and tractors and that kind of thing, right? So we'll go to a world where a certain, you know, grunt work stuff is taken away. So, but that transition would happen irregardless of any
Okay.
merger and that kind of
Let,
stuff. I just think the marginal faster capability would be good. And
let
I
me
think that
let me turn you
the
in a let me turn
for
you in a
te-
different can I turn you in a different direction here?
sure.
All this growth is great. I'm very excited about the growth of
Yeah.
AI and whether it's Tesla, SpaceX, or anyone else. I don't care if it's Anthropic or OpenAI or whatever. I'm very excited about
Right.
where AI is going. I've been looking very closely at the supply chain
Mhm.
for chips, for data centers,
Mhm.
and I don't see TSMC, Samsung, which it's TSMC and Samsung are the two big fab companies.
Right.
TSMC being the biggest, but Samsung also being fairly big.
Yeah.
ASML having a monopoly on extreme ultraviolet lithography machines and nearly a monopoly on ultraviolet lithography machines.
Right.
Zeiss Optics being a monopoly on the optics used by ASML, and there's several other links in the supply chain that are one or two company controlled, maybe three company controlled areas. Memory,
Right.
there's three companies that control memory, as an
Right.
example. And people think Micron's the biggest. I think Micron is number three. I think
Right.
SK Hynix and Samsung are both bigger in memory, and SK Hynix is the leader in high bandwidth memory for AI. I don't see how the supply chain keeps up with all the demand. I just
Right.
think fundamentally there's going to be a break somewhere that
Mhm.
somebody's going to like. And I look in particular at AMD and Micron. I like all the companies. People think I'm an AMD hater because I'm critical, or I'm a Micron hater because I'm critical. It's like, no, I love all these companies. I love what they're doing. I don't see how Micron can go. Micron and AMD can grow three times as fast as TSMC when
Mhm.
TSMC makes most of their chips. I don't
Right.
see how they can grow five times faster than ASML, which makes the lithography machines that go into TSMC. Like there's this,
Mhm.
and I don't even know how fast Zeiss Optics is growing. I know there's solutions like linear accelerators to generate the light that the lithography machines generate, but those are probably 3 to 5 years away from being commercial if they work. So,
Mm.
what do you think about the problem of what I would describe as a fragile supply chain for
Mhm.
all this growth that we're talking about for AI?
So one, Micron's growth was primarily the increase in price and margin. They weren't making that much more memory. It was that the memory went from 15% margin or 10% margin and then went to 70, 80%, 85% margin. So they got 6 times more money, um, and they raised their prices double or something like that. And now they could double again. So they're charging exorbitant prices for what they're offering because of the demand, right? So thus their stock price goes vertical, right? The
Hmm.
actual volume of wafers is not increasing that much. So the supply chain, but in order to get to a world where you're supplying 10 times more wafers and chips and doing everything else, then there's scaling that must occur. And that's where Elon agrees with you that the supply chain cannot keep up. And that's why he's trying to create Terafab, right? That we need to have more fab lines in order to solve that issue. And we'll also need more machines. And also, we need to drive the efficiency of machines. He wants to do what he did to Boring Company, take the existing machines and dial them up to 11 all the time and see what breaks. And say, okay, now I need to fix this and make that faster. So then it goes 10 times faster. So then I'm producing 100,000 wafers off this thing. If I, in the production line of the fab, if I replace this equipment and try and go double, triple, can I do the same number of machines and get 3 times the productivity out? So he's going to stress everything and upgrade as needed in order to get volumes up. And he will then take all the partners. He'll take TSMC, he'll take ASML, all the companies, and say, I'm going to space in the moon. I'm going to orbit. I'm going to up the volume by 10 times. We're going to go from making 20 gigawatts up to 200 gigawatts to 400 gigawatts in orbit. And then I'm going to go to the moon. We go to like 2 terawatts. So the ultimate increase is 100 times. So we're going to, in order to do the moon thing, I'm going to have to make fabs on the moon. So the terafab on Earth is training wheels for me to do the fab on the moon. Actually, 100 fabs on the moon, right? So, and then, well, how can you afford to do that? That's so expensive. We're making trillions of dollars, tens of trillions of dollars. This will become trivial for them to do this buildup. And he will land with 1,000 starships, 1,000, 10,000 starships, a literal D-Day invasion. Instead of 3,000 tons going
Okay,
to
but
orbit now.
you're going ahead of the game. Here's the problem.
Okay, right.
There's a guy named Christophe Fouquet. Okay, he's
Okay,
the CEO of ASML.
okay.
I don't think he's going along with this story. I watched an interview with him on Bloomberg, and
Hmm.
the interviewer asked him about this. He says, "Yeah, we met with Elon."
Yeah.
And I didn't get the impression he was won over. I mean, we know Elon went and visited with ASML.
Hmm.
He wasn't glowing about Elon. He said Terafab sounds nice. I don't think he was taking Terafab as seriously as Elon might want him to.
Hmm.
There was this striking moment in the interview. I don't know if you saw the interview. There's this striking moment in the interview where he just casually dropped that the Koreans have a millions of wafer. He said million of wafer project, and I think he meant millions of wafers. There's some
Hmm.
project in Korea that I've been started researching, where the
Hmm.
Korean government, in coordination with Samsung and SK Hynix, are building some kind of facility to manufacture and fab millions of wafers a month.
Right.
And it seemed to me he was taking that much more seriously than he was Terafab. And if he has to increase his output, it sounds like he's committing his increased output to the Koreans rather than to Terafab. And,
Hmm.
we're dealing with a Dutch company that operates in a European environment,
Hmm.
that doesn't seem to care about, like, the European economy in general doesn't seem that interested in growth.
Right.
So unless Elon is planning on building EUV machines in the Terafab, which I
Hmm.
would not put past him, I think there's a chance that Elon's just going to say, "Screw it. We have to either we have to put a linear accelerator at Giga Texas,
Yeah.
or wherever, wherever we're
Hmm.
building our Terafab, we're going to have to build a linear accelerator so we can generate the light we need, which is going to be better than." But that technology, as great as Elon is, that technology is 3 to 5 years away, and the
Right.
challenge of replicating what ASML does, I don't know how. I think that's really hard because of the physic the physicists and engineers you need to make that work. I don't want to
Right.
doubt the SpaceX team and the Tesla team and being able to do like crazy things, but I
Yeah.
think the level of knowledge and applied knowledge in ASML and Zeiss
Mhm.
Optics is that's not a small task.
Right.
So I'm just looking at, I see demand for AI increasing rapidly, and I
Hmm.
see Elon trying to scale compute, and I see others trying to scale compute. But TSMC only has so many fabs. There aren't that many other fabs out there. Terafab won't be producing chips. The real full blown Terafab won't be producing chips in volume until 2029 probably. So I don't know if the supply chain keeps up through 2027. I think we're going to
Hmm.
see. I think we're
Yeah.
going to see some breaks. I think we're going to see some breaks in the supply chain that are going to cause massive problems. What do you see of, like?
Right.
Do you see something in the supply chain I don't see, or because I think we agree the demand is growing really fast,
Right.
and the
Right.
data
So
center.
we see supply chain breaks where, suddenly something becomes super high margin, super expensive because the supply chain can't keep up. So memory was the issue, and then ASML EVs probably become an issue. So as we ramp up, everything will have problems.
But it's not.
So
Sorry, it's not just
if
pricing. It's not just pricing.
ASML
Hang
and
on
the
one second.
CEO,
Hang on one second, Brian. It's not just pricing. TSMC CEO seems to refuse to expand production faster and won't charge more than 50% margin. ASML is effectively refusing to expand production as fast as the market wants. Like, isn't that a problem?
for SpaceX, the origin of SpaceX was the traditional rocket companies that were dominating launch, wouldn't sell Elon launch, and then he went and made his own rocket company. So if and one of them was Ariane, a European company that said, "Hey, reusable is just nuts," and all that kind of stuff, right? So Europeans have, um, you know, not thought about growth or not believed many things were possible that Elon said were possible. So, and if they don't cooperate, then yes, Elon will find a way to partner with someone else, whether it's Koreans, whether it's other people, and then he will hire whoever he needs to hire. Like his Terafab, he's trying to hire people from Taiwan, and they're trying to get those people and offering them like 10x higher salaries or 20x higher salaries. So um, he will find a way around that bottleneck. So if ASML chooses to not get with the program, he'll be scanning 1,000 times, then he'll need more stuff, and he will then replace them. It will take time. It may take 3 years, in which case we'll be short whatever, and he'll have only whatever workarounds he can generate out of that in order to get what he needs. But yes, we could end up with things not growing as fast as they should because other companies refuse to cooperate.
Where I'm going with that is away from Tesla and SpaceX a little bit, just to the larger AI economy. Is,
Yeah.
to me, if there are chinks in the supply chain, if there's problems in the supply chain, whatever, the the reason why I pick on AMD and Micron is because they have very high stock price. They've
Right.
grown very high compared to what I think they're. I think they're all worth it if the growth is
Mhm.
there.
Right.
But if the supply chain, like, people think I'm picking on AMD and Micron, like, no, I think they're great companies. But if their supply chain isn't there, their growth slows. and then
Hmm.
their valuation collapses because they've been priced for rapid growth.
Right.
Like, I don't understand why AMD is, roughly three times. No, I think AMD has 5 or 6x the price earnings ratio of Nvidia,
Hmm.
and 5x the price earnings ratio of TSMC. Like, that means
Right.
you're expected to grow that much faster than TSMC, which makes the chips that you use. Like, I don't see how you get there. And
Right.
if ASML doesn't make enough EUV machines for TSMC to make enough fabs, and Zeiss Optics doesn't make enough optics for ASML to make more EUV machines at the scale needed. I think
Mhm.
at some point it's not that the growth stops; it's that the growth doesn't go fast enough to justify the valuations of the highest flyers. Am I missing something there?
That is a scenario that could happen. I think that the base level growth will be good enough where, other than pullbacks, I don't see a super collapse of some of these key players. But collapses can happen, in which case, then you know, but it won't be because there wasn't enough funding, money, and effort to try and keep the thing going. Because that's what NVIDIA does, where it's like, I need to beef up my supply chain. Those are the circular deals everyone's freaking out about, is that they're making sure that critical suppliers, keep pace and don't screw up. So the biggest companies are trying to manage the whole supply chain.
Yeah,
So Tesla and Elon are trying to manage and create Terafab and manage the whole supply chain. NVIDIA is trying to manage the whole supply chain. Like, it's team AI trying to make sure that critical pieces don't blow up. Like, but counter to that is, you know, Elon is working to try and make OpenAI blow up, right? That he forced their IPO out a year, right? And they would have had $300 billion. Now they only have 100 billion or something like that. So he's doing things to play at this power level, right? So, um, but I think for now, yes, key players are TSMC and ASML and all those kind of things, but um, the United States is putting a lot of funding and effort to, like, make sure, hey, the fabs had to move from Taiwan over to the United States, to Arizona and other places, and the United States is going to support Terafab and then support Intel. So if they said, hey, we can onshore a version of ASML, there will be a virtually unlimited pocketbook to try and make that happen. And then also there's a bunch of um, startups, that I've seen, like a Neo memory company that has, a new version of um, better than high bandwidth memory, which you have 200 layers and stuff like that. So there's companies with really good technology and really interesting people that, you, and Elon could get a portfolio of them, figure out, like, pick out, yeah, this could work. I could figure out. I think they picked up, the dry cell stuff, even though it took a bunch of time to make it work, the Maxwell. They could find, here's a company with interesting technology, interesting people. I can combine it with this and we can make it work, right? So they will be picking technology, and, like, there's ways to get around needing the EUV, with nanostructured materials and doing a bunch of other stuff. So there's other technology and ideas that are waiting in the wings to have a shot at breaking the bottlenecks and replacing what's currently existing. So I think there's enough other ideas, especially if you combine that with, AI that's got world models and physics and stuff like that to accelerate your workarounds.
let me just. I want to get back to this point though that this is AMD, okay, and their price earnings ratio is now 190. Okay, so I'm not
Right.
suggesting AMD fails, but if AMD slows, like continues to grow, but it slows to
Mhm.
like 25% growth a year.
Right.
It's priced for, like, doubling every
Perfection.
7 months or something like that.
Right.
I don't know, when you have a price earnings ratio of 190, what growth rate does that require? If if
Mhm.
ASML doesn't increase, and this is the other thing, like people have this idea that AMD is going to get more chips. Is like Nvidia gets first dibs on TSMC's fab, right? I don't know where how AMD. I just come down to this problem of I don't see how AMD grows that fast, and if the supply chain chokes, and TSMC and Samsung can't grow their fab output,
Mhm.
AMD can't grow as fast as the demand, and then their stock price has to fall. I'm rooting for AMD. I want AMD to succeed. I think they're a great company,
Mhm.
but and then their latest system uses 50% more memory than Nvidia's system. But they're trying to
Mhm.
undercut Nvidia on price. But one of your most key components, you're using 50% more than them, so your costs are higher. Like
Mhm.
I don't know how this works. Do you follow AMD and Micron? Do you see the problems that I'm seeing with like their dependence on the supply chain growing faster than it can?
I've been looking at it for Micron. I own some Micron, and I've looked at them. I see the memory demand still continuing for the next 2, 3 years. On their production, I see their plans to increase wafers. I am not parsing out. I'll take another look at it to see if there's some issues there. Um, I didn't I didn't expect a huge collapse if they continue to moderately increase production and the pricing demand still stays high. I don't think there's a. I think they're underpriced because they have only like 8-10x forward PE kind of thing. So based on forward PE, then they're and my estimate of their forward PE, then their earnings they look all right to me. But I'll take another look at it, with what you're saying could be issues in supply chain for them. Um, and then AMD, I think it's mainly just giving them the benefit of the doubt that they can do certain catch up against NVIDIA. I think there's that the NVIDIA is constrained, and so the case seems to be that AMD will continue to have sales and sales growth because of the issues that NVIDIA has with meeting the demand. So it's basically, but it is, if there's anything that blows the froth off the stuff, then AMD might be one of the ones that would be, um, what is it, the Warren Buffett talking about when the tide goes out, you'll see who's, not wearing whatever,
Right.
right?
Well,
So
what have we not covered that you want to talk about? Because I took you off track a couple times.
I'm super bullish on the need for the fast build up of the AI and the monetization of it. I think the key for, again, going back to SpaceX and Tesla, is to get to that frontier model. So, Grok 4.5 need to be good. The 6 trillion, 10 trillion per hour, the stuff they're doing with Cursor needs to happen to where they get to the lead, or at least fully catch up on comparable to the Fable model. I think that's a critical thing for them. And that getting domination on Earth with the grid is hugely important, even in a world where there's all the space AI, because of the need for enough training in other computers. Like having that abundance, I think is key. I think that's what needs to happen. And then I have details around that which you don't need to go over, but that I think overall um, the speed of the transition is is more important than the race over the next few years is more important. I believe that um, separately or together, like you're saying, that ultimately Elon will win it. But I think it'll be easier to do it together, and then he'll determine, if that's the case, and whether he'll propose in the next couple of
Can
months
can
on
there
it.
be more than one winner? I mean, I look at it and I think they all win. It's a question of who wins bigger, but everybody wins.
Um, I think there will be some weeding out of stuff. I think that the like if there's four models, four main guys now, where you have like Anthropic, Google, OpenAI, um, XA, whatever, that could drop down to two, right? You have one and another. Um,
But
and
why does somebody drop out? They're all useful now. I use all four of them. I
right.
find all four of them useful.
Mhm.
They're all going to get more useful. And if you can make money as the inexpensive model, why would you ever
Mhm.
drop out?
Um, I think it's because based on like one I think is going to drop out is OpenAI, right? I think that their $1 trillion raise valuation, that they can't do their IPO and they can't do rounds higher, right? And then they can no longer stay at the investment rate of the leading edge, right? That they in particular would implode, right? That you also lose your talent, you lose your resources, the need for constant growth without establishing um, a solid revenue stream. Like Google can stay long term because they have Google search and the advertising and they maintain that thing going. So long as that's protected, they have staying power. At even if the others race ahead, they will stay at a certain level and be okay. Just like Cisco. Cisco, was the biggest company in the world during the dot-com, and then they held at, 50, 100 billion or something like that. And then they stayed because they had their specialization and kept things going. So everyone can kind of win, but they may become Cisco irrelevant off the leading edge, right?
Okay.
So winning versus alive but not relevant is something that can also happen to companies. So I think staying at that leading edge will be tougher, and that's the advantage that SpaceX and Tesla will have is that we will have these, the launch revenue, the salaries with energy that give us scale, even if someone else is the leading model, right? It gives us staying power beyond, if you only have the model, you haven't built up Digital Optimus as this alternative revenue stream. So you have to have a bulletproof revenue stream to maintain a high level of spend. That there'll be a massive amount of resources to deploy.
I want to push back on this.
Sure.
There's this very big focus on coding, and like Claude isn't the lead because of coding, but we're at the very early stages of a massive technological transition.
Right.
And what we've seen, like to me, Claude Code or coding is like the Excel of the internet. Like
Mm.
it's the early stage killer app. There's more
Right.
killer apps coming.
Right.
And I think there's so many killer apps coming. I think there's so many different use cases for AI that look, you're brilliant. I think I'm a
Mm.
smart guy. I watch
Mm.
other like I don't even think Elon sees all the use cases coming. I think
Right.
that there are so like I think real time video generation, which is coming with Vera Rubin, but too expensive. But go 2 3 years out on the next on future generations of efficient inference hardware, and all of a sudden you have real time video conversations with an AI generated avatar. And maybe it's
Yeah.
adult entertainment, and maybe it's just a friend or whatever. But I think that's an example of a killer app, and I think there are so I can envision that one, right? And I think that there's so much opportunity for each model to get really good at one thing, and for other models to come along that are really good at this other thing. And it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be that there's one model that's good at everything.
Hmm.
The other thing I want to mention, just off the top of my head, so I built this website. I don't think this shows up. lcratio.com.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
I built that with Grok Build. I think I told you I built that with Grok Build with Codex as the senior software engineer in 4 hours while I watched podcasts. Um, there's still as a when you just have developers building, you have like
Hmm.
1% of the population or less is building,
Hmm.
right? But if you can remove, I found certain friction points in the process of building that. And it wasn't really the building part. It was like finding a domain name, finding a host, managing API keys, right? There's
Mhm.
like they were like my work was not the coding side. It was like here's what I want, and then oh
Mhm.
these are things that the AI is telling me I have to do to make
Mhm.
this work. And I think we're
Right.
headed towards a future soon. I think Google is close to this. I think SpaceX AI will probably do this where I want to build an app and I don't want to worry about hosting and I don't want to worry about domain names. I want it to
Mhm.
be on x.com/LC ratio.
Mhm.
I want it to be on google.com/LC ratio. Whatever, my Thai language app. I think that the future for these models and another huge advantage for Google and SpaceX AI versus Anthropic and OpenAI is if they take the coding, the vibe coding, and say you can build an app and you can host it on our platform.
Mhm.
And you don't have to worry about buying it. You don't have to worry about API keys. It's like it's here. It's available for anyone who wants to use it by just going to x.com/whatever, right? Or google.com
Mhm.
slash whatever, or whatever Google wants to name their platform. And
Yeah.
you port directly to that. And now the AI makes sure it works on an iPhone and it works on an Android phone and it works on a desktop, Windows desktop, and it works on a Mac laptop. And the AI handles that part about making it work on all the platforms. But I have the idea of this is what I want to build.
Mhm.
Um, I think that world. This is like where this is one of those things where I think like one of the killer apps is can you enable the normies to build? Right now,
Mhm.
the nerds are building.
Yeah.
Right, it's less than 1% of the population is building. Maybe we'll never get to 90% of the population building, but if we get to 10% of the population building, we have a much bigger world.
Mhm.
And I literally talk to my kids about this. Think about something you want to do. Talk to an AI about how to do it. Like
Mhm.
I don't think people realize yet how easy it's going to be. And there's that next level of not only can you build. I think Google already has it where in Google AI Studio they have a sandbox and you can operate it in the sandbox, and it's basically ready to go to Android.
Mhm.
So they're
Right.
they're getting close to that world, and
Right.
I don't think Anthropic and OpenAI are going in that direction. I feel like everybody's focused, like everyone's focused on code. It's like, no, there's stuff coming we don't see,
Mhm.
and
Right.
and like as big as you think the coding demand is, the
Mhm.
demand for tokens for these other things is actually going to be 1,000x the demand for code.
Right.
Am I off?
Um, the next thing I see after the coding, two main things I see after that are um, research, scientific, algorithmic, and other kind of research, where you have the AI scientist, right? Because you're pushing the frontier of knowledge, and that
Yeah.
has huge value. And then also being executing upon it to realize it in the real world. Like, okay, we can figure out how to do molecular nanotechnology, which would be moving atoms where we want, and that gives us super materials and that kind of stuff. So getting to the physical limits on things is um, something that'd be hugely important because everything that we do still has a physical layer component to it, and so um, maximizing that is something that needs to happen. The other, so but beyond coding is AI coder going to AI scientist, and then the other one would be world models, where we have more data and we're gathering it into systems that are fully mapping and letting us get insights into the real world and generate more data, right? So getting more data, more synthetic data, and figuring out how to use AI to generate its own data beyond just synthetic data, because it's ultimately the intelligence is limited by that. So having the AI researchers and having the AI guided data gathering and data um, curating is the ultimate thing. So if you can get an endpoint would be you have all the energy of the sun because you're doing this thing with
Hardest shit,
gathering
baby.
all the Dyson sphere, Dyson swarm, and then using that to get more data about the universe, to have all this. stuff where we're observing everything in the universe to the physical limit that we can to suck in more information to for us to understand the universe, which is what Elon says. One, ultimate truth to understand the universe is the purpose of the AI. So that monetarily is also there'll be value in getting more and more data. Again, at a certain point, it's we're just doing it because that is we're just trying to learn for curiosity. So so beyond that, there's huge value in terms of like confirming what the physical laws are and being able to model it in the systems. So, so that I think is beyond that. But having AI generating AI coding factories where we have a billion times the compute generating the code of a trillion humans is something that would let us take what is sometimes statistical for large language models into a deterministic world. The code can be deterministic. So then we can have things coded and censored and tracked in a way that doesn't have errors. So the coding is a perfected step, or we can just figure out how to make LLMs also deterministic, having a second version of AI. So the current version of AI will probably be replaced with something else that gets rid of all the downside issues that we have with it. Um, so there'll be more transitions in our science, transitions in our intelligence, but the purpose would be more energy, more data, better use of data, more intelligence in order to um, perfect our knowledge.
You one
There'll
upped
be value
Karpathy.
in
You just one upped
what?
Karpathy. It's not more data, more compute. It's more energy, more data, more compute.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Because again, the physical layer matters. Like just figuring out how to do something with smaller, like it's having um, intelligence throughout the solar system kind of thing would be, and then going beyond the solar system would be hugely valuable to
So you
do.
don't think real time video generation is coming soon and it's going to be huge?
It will be just relative to all this other stuff. It will be less, although it will how it applies into more data and world models is what will be relevant. Just for content creation for other people to consume, it it will be a huge business, but a drop in the bucket relative to the other bigger application
Because
of
my
it.
sense is that real time video generation is 1,000x the tokens, if not 10,000x the tokens I use in a chat. And I to
Right,
to be blunt, like your vision of the future is not consumer oriented. Like as a human, you
right.
describe all these things, and like I'm not saying it doesn't eventually produce value for me as a human, but it's not obvious to me. And I'm looking at
Yeah,
I think ultimately all these revolutions are driven by what changes life for us as ordinary humans. So that's
right.
something that I don't. When you describe that future, I don't hear how that's making my life better.
I said, getting us perfected health, immortality, longevity, um, exploring the solar system, doing stuff that will be better. And then having, many, you know, human bots per person working for us. It'll be a very abundant future that would be Star Trek, except you get the economics right. Star Trek doesn't have the proper economics
Mhm.
in their stories, but then we will have that.
Another thing that like big thought that it's been occupying my mind is Elon has at certain points said that it changes that the concept of an economy no longer has any meaning if this and this happens. And I'm looking at a world where you have digital agents, whether it's digital Optimus or whatever, AI agents interacting with each other. You have physical robots interacting with each other in the real world. And at some point, a very large share of the activity, economic, physical, whatever activity in the world, is AI interacting with each other rather than humans doing things either with AI or with each other. And is
Right.
there a point where AI becomes 95% of the and the economy grows a million X
Yeah.
and AI drives much of that and humans get 100x benefit, but the economy has actually grown much larger than that. And I try
Right.
to wrap my head around, like, do we ultimately decide that agents are consumers, that robots are consumers? Is it ultimately only humans are consumers and all these agents and robots are really just production for the humans? I don't know where
Right.
that goes.
So I would view that as a decoupling of the economy from per capita per human activity. So that could happen relatively soon, when we get, enough digital optimists and optimists, physical optimists. So, 2040, around that, 2050 could have
I,
a serious
I think it's much.
decoupling.
I think it's much sooner than that.
Yeah, possibly much sooner. Yeah, I'm just saying for sure it should happen around then, and it could happen as early as 2035 or something like that. So the decoupling would be that. I still think there would be a way to connect it, though it wouldn't quite be there yet. But anyway, so decoupling would be what you're talking about, where um, it's all happening without people more and more and that kind of thing. So the tipping point of 50-50 could be very, very soon, right? And then the other thing would be that um, when did that change for people? Um, Again, it could be relatively quickly, like a 20x or 50x growth in the world economy, where basically the amount of human taxation, income tax it being irrelevant, like basically the amount of taxation for the whole United States is about, $5 trillion, of which 2 trillion is income tax. So all you had to do would be double things up, $60 trillion economy, and then you could get the taxation thing from corporate taxes and capital gains or something like that, and then have no income tax. So there could be something transitions where it would, you could radically change how the economy works by that. Also, we have about 2%, 3% for charity. So then once you have 2 to 3% that can handle um, um, abundant, uh, basic abundant income, but or whatever I'm referring to it, then um, then a lot of people are basically retired, where basically you've gotten a good amount of wealth for your retirement and you don't have to work anymore. Then the transition, yes, then the transition to doing things because you want to kind of thing, right? So then everyone can make that transition, but then we have to um, guide people on their identity. Like we can think about, here's how I self-drive myself, here's how I want to do things, here how I enjoy my life. But for other people, they may not be psychologically ready for the transition. So there'll be this adjustment period and also societal adjustment period to, you know, how do we, you know, allocate and have meaning and purpose and all that kind of stuff.
Let me take a different angle on that as well. So, I live in Thailand. Minimum wage in Thailand is $10 a day.
Mhm.
People think that the illegal alien problem or the illegal migration problem is only a problem in America. The illegal aliens from Myanmar and Laos work for $5 a day.
Mhm.
They live in a shack down the road,
Mhm.
some shacks down the road. Um, I look at Optimus and Cybercab and I see, oh, that's super competitive in America. That's super competitive in
Mhm.
most of the Western world. When you get to Thailand and Malaysia, which are not the poorest
Mhm.
countries in the world, I don't know if Optimus amortized over the hours it works or the days it works is less expensive than a Thai worker. And then you go to
Mhm.
India and Bangladesh and Africa where people have even less money. And I wonder if I don't I'm not too I wouldn't say I'm worried. I think that the spillover works somehow. But I look at the future and I say if I'm building an AI robot, an AI cybercab, I'm going to deploy it to rich countries where it generates more monetary value. And I
Right.
I see a future like especially we talked about Europe before not growing in Europe. Mark Andreessen said that 80% of what AI is going to do is already illegal in Europe.
Right.
I see AI doing tremendous things in China, tremendous things in America as long as we don't screw up in 2028.
Mhm.
I mean, there's open opposition to AI in the I call it the Hamasocratic Party now, but the
Hmm.
the Bernie Sanders AOC Mamdani party opposes data centers, opposes AI. They never mind that AI is going to cure cancer. They want to cure cancer,
Hmm.
but they don't want AI to do it. Um,
Yeah.
they want us to drive EVs, but they don't want Elon to build them. Um, I think China's clearly going to adopt AI at scale fast, and China's economy is going to grow insanely fast. I think America will get there. I think we won't screw it up. I'm worried that
Yeah.
we might screw it up. I think there's like a 40-50% chance we screw it up in 2028 and it ends. I think Japan probably adopts because Japan is very techno friendly. Taiwan, whether it's part of China or not, will adopt. Singapore. I don't see a lot of countries outside the ones like Thailand, where I am, rejected Starlink. I believe they're going to allow FSD soon. I paid for FSD because I think they're going to allow it. But I think in a lot of the world, it's either not going to be economically wise to deploy your AI because people are too poor to generate value for your AI. And there are a lot of governments that are going to refuse to allow AI to generate value in their economy. So where do you see that geographic future going?
So um, the fact that it happened is happening now in the United States, and I think will continue to happen in the United States and in China means that, in 4 or 5 years, 10 years, it's totally through them. And then the question of the laggards, Europe choosing not to adopt it, others being unable to adopt it, then there'll have to be some kind of way to spread things over to them. The ones that are being carried along now are the energy economies, which was Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, the ones where um, we just did deals so that we can have access to natural gas and other things for that. Um, in the big picture of this, it will be less economically relevant to the United States because I see the United States growing to really fast levels. That basically, if we don't have a bubble in AI, which I think that we don't, right? Then we sustain the trillion, $5 trillion spending levels, which I equate to in World War II, GDP growth in the United States was 18% for 4 years. People thought that the GDP growth in China was the fastest in the world ever for a developed economy, and it was actually the United States during World War II. So that mobilization, we're going through AI mobilization right now.
Hmm.
So the but it's an AI mobilization that keeps going if there's no bubble. So then you're spending a billion AI data centers, you're going to this 18% GDP growth. If Elon succeeds in getting 100 gigawatts per year, 500 gigawatts per year, GDP growth for the United States connected to that economy would be 30-50% per year. So the level of growth that the US will have, the dominance in power, energy, technology will just be insane, right? So that goes to industrial revolution where we went from a 0.5% to 1/3% GDP growth to the 2% GDP growth because we had industrialization, right? And then sustaining that for 50 years, 100 years with a gap between the US and Mexico, the US and Thailand, right? Where basically we all were poor and then industrial revolution took us up 100 times. So, but this can be faster, where if we accelerate into 50%, 100% GDP growth per year, then within 10 years or 1,000 times higher, right? Within um, um,
Yeah.
4 years, you're 10x higher, right? So the gap will just be explosively fast where it goes to a huge level. Europe, I don't see fixing itself on that. The Asian economies, um, even if you can fast follow where you can get up to the 18, 20%, 30% GDP growth level, you won't be keeping up with the United States in its ideal scenario, but you'd be doing far better.
I
That
think I
like
think
Korea
I think
would keep pace.
Japan and Korea are on board. Japan will adopt the
Sure, yeah, Korea on board. Yeah,
The,
yeah,
the difference is Korea is building the technology. Japan has some companies in the supply chain that are building the technology, but Japan will adopt the technology. If you say Japan, you can
right,
have Optimus for $50,000, they'll buy a million of them in a heartbeat. Japan
right.
wants that.
Singapore too. Right,
Singapore,
right,
but Singapore is very small. But I mean, I think there's a
right.
there's pockets of countries that will grow, but I think a large swath of the world will not adopt. A large swath of the world will, you have dictators who want power and they don't care about their people. You
Hmm.
have countries like, I'll say Thailand is a country that's more, it's like controlled by elites, and the elites
Hmm.
very clearly don't care about the general population.
Right.
And I think that's a common scenario. And then another common scenario is you have like a very tight oligarchy or monarchy or whatever. I'm not referring to Thailand here on this, but you have countries where there's people who have a lot of power and they control things, and they're not interested. Like I think United Arab Emirates and the Saudis will be on board with this technological change.
Hmm.
They'll be in the camp of they may not be able to lead it, but they'll ride the wave. Israel will be in on it.
Right,
But I
right.
would say 90% of the world's not 90%. Like India won't be able to keep up. India
Hmm.
will shoot itself in the foot 100. Smartest people in the world can't stop shooting themselves in the foot. Like
Right.
I worry that like we're going to see a lot of the world fall behind. I think there will just be spillover benefits of like the rich people from America and China will do that much more tourism and spend that much more money in your country, and your country's
Right.
economy will grow 50%, while our
Hmm.
country's economies grow 1,000%.
Yeah. So there'll have to be some kind of super Marshall Plan. Like the abundance in the two main economies and the other side ones will be so great. The spillover would be okay. This abundance has enabled us to eliminate taxation, and we'll have to do things to give to people in order to keep people happy about it. Like I think in 2028, even in 2026, 2027, there'll probably be an introduction of a no taxation for people under 35 in the United States, no taxation for people making less than $100,000. That's about 10% of the income tax. And so in order to blunt the Mondami thing, that will be introduced in the United States. And then in as if we start getting to double-digit GDP growth, then it becomes apparent that the takeoff is happening. Then the um, offer of Marshall plans to other countries that aren't following. It will be, hey, get on board, here, have a bunch of stuff, get on board the
They
program.
won't take it.
One,
They won't. They don't want it. The people who
I
control
understand
these
they don't
countries
want it, but
don't
it's
want it.
like some will, right?
Some.
And then, yeah. So then you have to offer it to try and move things along. So you have to have carrots and sticks, I guess, like in order to try and move along. I don't it's going to happen so fast that, and it's already happening where the divergence is occurring. Like, other countries are not using, the Claude code, the systems that are even within the United States is concentrated in the leading edge tech and business people, right? So there'll have to be this spreading out of it in order to get inclusive. I think that the All In podcast talk about the need to get it inclusive, to get the messaging out, make it inclusive in order to transition. So there'll be a need to solve the how do we get people on board, get it included thing has to happen. Um, so it's that issue, even before the giant takeoff of double-digit GDP, is something that needs to be solved in the next 2, 3 years. That we need to figure out how to
No, I don't agree with you. I think the cold hard reality
uh,
is that China and America will grow, and Korea will grow, and Japan, and there'll be 10. Argentina will probably be on board, right? There's going to be 10
right,
countries out of 200 that are going to be on board and are going to grow like crazy, and the rest of the world is just going to be spending its time shooting itself in the foot. And I don't think it's within our power to force them to make their lives better for their people. And I don't think we should waste
right,
our
right.
time. I don't think we should waste our time. If they want our help, we're here. They don't really want our
Mhm.
help. And it's much more important for them to maintain power over their people than it is for them to make life better for their people. The people who control these countries,
Yeah.
they just fundamentally don't care about the welfare of their own people. It's I don't know
Right.
how much time you spent in other countries, but I've seen a lot.
Yeah,
And
I've traveled a lot, so I travel over, Europe and Asia to many, many countries. So I've
right.
seen a lot. And I know that, yes, there are countries that are purposely messing themselves up,
It's,
didn't
I
get
think
on
it's
board with,
I think
yeah,
it's 90% of the 200
majority.
countries. It's
Right. I'm probably, but right.
all
Yeah.
right. I've kept you too long, but I'll give you a chance if there's anything else you want to talk about.
No, I think I'm good. We had a lot of good talk, and we should do, more often next time. Have
All
a,
right.
you know,
All right. This
hopefully
was
we
a
can shorten.
marathon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.